Rips into Andrew Cuomo over the coronavirus vaccine. Fox News is in damage control. Plus, I will give you an update on the 2020 elections. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is Saturday Live Stream.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to start with President Trump and the coronavirus vaccine because he held a press conference in the Rose Garden yesterday and just laid it all out, laid out what has happened with this development from Pfizer and Operation Warp Speed. And here's the president.
As a result of Operation Warp Speed, Pfizer announced on Monday that its China virus vaccine is more than 90% effective. This far exceeds any and all expectations. Nobody thought they'd get to that level. And we have others coming which we think will be at equal level.
All right, so now it's great that Pfizer has developed this. I mean, we're glad that it happened, but you have to question the timing. I mean, coming out the first business day after the media declared that Joe Biden was the winner, that's a little weird, folks. I mean, you'd think that they would know about this vaccine with 90% effective rate and how it works and get it out to the people and get that information out in time. You know that President Trump would have cruised to the re-election if he had known this, if the people had known this. But instead, they hold off on it. And they also said they weren't participating in Operation Warp Speed. President Trump cleared that up.
In July, my administration reached an agreement with Pfizer to provide $1.95 billion to support the mass manufacturing and distribution of 100 million doses, with the option to purchase a total of 600 million doses shortly thereafter. Our investment will make it possible for the vaccine to be provided by Pfizer free of charge.
All right, so that's $2 billion. $2 billion to Pfizer through Operation Warp Speed to get this assembled. Why they didn't own up to that, why they tried to downplay that, I'll never know. But it's clear that Pfizer and other big pharma are in support of Joe Biden. There's no doubt about it, because President Trump wants to bring those drug prices under control. That's the last thing that this big pharma wants to do. There is no doubt, and you can look at contributions too. They supported Joe Biden, but the president left some of his best remarks for Andrew Cuomo. And let's go back in time just a little bit. Andrew Cuomo, a couple of weeks ago, he was making the rounds on the show, blasting President Trump on coronavirus, and also promoting this book. I just got to put this up there. Take a look at this book cover from Cuomo. I mean, seriously, leadership lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, this is the governor that handled coronavirus the worst. Out of any governor in the entire United States, he was the worst. And yet he writes a book about leadership. It's unbelievable. So there he is on Good Morning America talking to George Stephanopoulos. Stephanopoulos asks him if he trusts the coronavirus vaccine.
We saw Dr. Fauci last night say that he trusts the experts at the FDA. How confident are you in the approval process of the FDA right now?
All right, so Cuomo stepped in there, and you got to just look at his response. First, he says he doesn't trust it, but then he totally does a political deflection and takes it to the people of New York or the American people in general, saying what's more important is that they don't trust it. And so I'm with them. So Stephanopoulos actually pressed him a little bit on it and said, what do you think? How are you going to do this? And he basically said, I don't trust him at all. I'm going to put my own team together.
And if they say it's safe, then I'll go to the people of New York and I will say it's safe with that credibility. But I believe all across the country, you're going to need someone other than this FDA and this CDC saying it's safe.
All right, so President Trump knows those comments. He knows the criticism from Cuomo. So as part of that press conference yesterday, he laid into him. But first, he reminded the American people of the dangers of coronavirus, who is really, really vulnerable and who isn't, and how that would affect the distribution of the vaccine.
We know that this virus primarily targets older populations and those with underlying health conditions, while over 99.98% of those under the age of 50 make a full and quick recovery. By giving the vaccine to high-risk individuals right away, we will dramatically reduce hospitalizations and deaths.
All right. So first, the vaccine is going to go to the elderly and the vulnerable, and then it will be started to distribute to the general public, but not the entire general public, not places like New York.
For political reasons, the governor decided to say, and I don't think it's good politically. I think it's very bad from a health standpoint, but he wants to take his time on the vaccine. He doesn't trust where the vaccine's coming from. These are coming from the greatest companies anywhere in the world, greatest labs in the world. But he doesn't trust the fact that it's this White House, this administration. So we won't be delivering it to New York.
All right, folks, I love that statement. Personally, I love that statement because it puts the New York people getting mad at Andrew Cuomo. Because do you really think the people of New York are just going to sit back while this vaccine's out there? The vaccine will be made available, and for those who want to take it, it'll be out there. But do you think the people of New York, those that want to take it, are just going to sit by and wait for Andrew Cuomo's special team? What Fauci has said, hey, I trust the CDC. You can say what you want about Fauci, but this process, this Operation Warp Speed has been spectacular. I don't plan on taking the virus. I'm one of the 99.98% that will be fine, probably won't even feel it. But if I do feel it, I'll get over it. But those that want to take it, if you live in New York, you got to put some pressure on Andrew Cuomo, because while he's out writing books, he was a disaster for New York and coronavirus, and I'm so glad that President Trump called him out on it. So next, I want to talk about Fox News. But first, if you're new to the show or you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified. Now we're making our push for 150,000 members, and we can do it with your help. I'm so happy with the growth, and I just want to thank all of you. So now let's talk about Fox News, because their ratings have taken a hit. They are in a free fall, and the word is out there that they're in damage control. And we've seen it coming, folks. We've seen the hosts that they've hired, like Donna Brazile. We've seen this move to the left, but it was never been so clear as in these closing months of the campaign. I mean, we had Chris Wallace, who was a disaster in the debate, so unprofessional. It was a 2-on-1 debate, going after Trump, interrupting him, and basically giving Joe Biden a pass on all the tough questions and just uninterrupted time. That was Chris Wallace. It was a disaster. Then, of course, you move to election night and Fox News jumping out, calling Arizona before anyone else did, before they should, just to influence things. Even statistical guru Nate Silver, he said it does not matter now the way Arizona ends up. Based on what we see, there is no one that should have called Arizona early like Fox News did. And yet they brought on their experts. We stand by this and everything. Folks, that was a bad deal. It was politically motivated, and we all know it. But then they continued. I mean, even this week, Kayleigh McEnany, she's out there with the campaign side, going to these states, looking at these voters, looking at eyewitnesses, talking to them, getting affidavits of actual documented voter fraud. She has listed it out. She holds a press conference during the time that Neil Cavuto is on the air on Fox, and here's what happens.
We want every legal vote to be counted, and we want every illegal vote to be...
I just think we have to be very clear. She's charging, the other side is welcoming fraud and welcoming illegal voting. Unless she has more details to back that up, I can't in good countenance continue showing you this.
Are you kidding me? I mean, folks, what happened to we report, you decide? Now they're making the decisions for everybody. They decide first. They will decide what information gets out to the American people rather than getting both sides, rather than getting the actual information so people can make a decision. Nope, Cavuto cut that off. And here's a press conference. People need to get the unfettered access, the unfiltered comments from both sides, and then make decisions. Instead, Twitter is labeling everything as controversial. Neil Cavuto is cutting out. It's outrageous. And then you have Sandra Smith, who is absolutely appalled that someone would question Fox News calling the race for Joe Biden.
Over whoever is decided to be the president. Remember, just because CNN says, or even Fox News says that somebody's president, doesn't make them president. So I think everybody wants to know that this was done properly and legally.
What is happening? Like, Trace, we've called it.
And I think we have to look into.
Trace, we've called it. What's happening here? How dare anyone question Fox News? the arrogance of it all is just right there enough to turn me off. But it's just this ongoing trend, this move to the left that is just, it's politically motivated anti-Trump actions, and it has people freaked out. It has people turning to other sources. Emerald Robinson, she is a reporter for Newsmax. She tweeted this: "Let me tell you how big the exodus from Fox News has become. Fox has hired a crisis management team to handle PR for their ratings crisis. Foxit is real and it's spectacular." Well, I don't know how big it is, but I truly believe that they are under damage control, because look at just what happened yesterday. Sandra Smith, the one who was caught there saying to Trace, "Oh, we called it. How dare they?" She got on, and it was part of her sign off yesterday addressing these things. So first, she talks about these areas, these controversies that have generated interest on the internet.
First, a leaked video of comments that I made off-air during our special election coverage on Saturday. That was spliced together with our on-air segment. For the record, I was not editorializing. I was pointing out to our producers that we, in addition to other outlets, had already called the presidential race.
All right. So then she talks about another instance where some screen grab was spliced together to put out a completely false narrative. And then she goes into happy mode, talking about how great Fox News is. And here's Smith.
I report facts and I report them fairly. We have many different voices and opinions during segments of our show, and all are welcome. I am proud to work with an amazing team here on America's Newsroom and on the Fox News channel. I lean on this team of talented producers and journalists to cut through the noise and present the news accurately and fairly. Thank you for making us your choice for news from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern weekdays. And I will see you back here Tuesday, taking that day off.
Taking that day off. Well, how special is that? Folks, I want to go old school Fox News for you and say, I report, you decide. So you decide, what do you think that clip was all about? Do you think it was just a sign off to clear the air? Or do you think this is some damage control from some PR firm that they hired? Because believe me, all you have to do is watch a little bit of Newsmax to see that they are freaking out over there with the traffic that they are getting, with the downloads that they're getting off their app for, iPhone and Google. It is just amazing, the growth. I think it's happening at One American News as well. I tend to watch Newsmax more because I'm on there. I love their guy. Check it out. But there is no doubt that there is a freak out going on, and Newsmax is on the losing end of it. So next, I want to give you kind of just an in-depth look at these races, at the 2020 election, and see where things are and where things are going. Not just with President Trump, but how Republicans did in general. And I want to start, and if you guys have any questions, please put them down there. Our producer, Sonia, she'll try and pick out the questions, let me know, and I'll address those as well. But I want to go from House, Senate, and President and give you guys an update and just kind of a rundown on how things went. Because you have to remember, for one thing, that we were facing a blue wave. That's what the media wanted us to believe. That's what the Democrats wanted us to believe. They thought that Joe Biden could do absolutely nothing, and just him being on the ticket, just people going out to vote for president, would sweep away all the Republicans, from president to senators to the House members. A big blue wave. And it was nothing, folks. It was a disaster for the Democrats. And disaster is not hyperbole. Just look at the House. We're going to start there. The estimates were that Democrats, as part of this blue wave, would win 15 to 20 additional seats. They took the lead last time. They took control of the House in 2018, partially, I believe, because President Trump wasn't on the ticket. Now they were expected to gain another 15 to 20. Well, what happened? Instantly, 5 seats, 6 seats. Now we're up to 12 seats gained by the Republicans. Not a single Republican incumbent House member lost on election night. Not one of them. In fact, we gained 12 seats so far. That is awesome, and it proves there's no blue wave, and it also proves that the Democrats, especially on the House side, are in disarray. All you have to do is see what has happened in the news during this past week, with conference calls from the Democrats shouting at each other, the progressive wing, the AOCs, the Squad, Ilhan Omar's, and the more moderate Democrats who are freaked out because they had to run in close races. We saw Democrats lose And AOC and them are pushing Green New Deal, defund the police, and extreme policies like that. They are in disarray, but it also shows the organization on the House side. Kevin McCarthy and the other leaders did a great job of candidate recruitment. This will be the largest female GOP class in the history of the Republican Party. The largest class. We had great candidates, great recruitment, great messages in those districts, and we had President Trump on the top of the ticket. So to go from 15 to 20 Democrat gains to 12 gains for the Republicans is huge. And here's another thing, is that in 2018, when they voted again, every 2 years they vote on the speaker. That's the first order of business of a new class. Nancy Pelosi had 15 Democrat defections. 15 Democrats did not vote for her. Now the difference between House Democrats and Republicans is even closer. If they got all those 15 to defect again, she would not win. And Kevin McCarthy, I believe, is planning to challenge her, even though the Democrats still have control of the House. That's how unpopular she is. And if they can peel off some Democrat support, we could end up with a new Speaker of the House. That's how bad it was on the Democrat side. On the Senate side, we were supposed to just be blown out there as well. We were up 53-47 as far as Republican to Democrat on the Senate side, but the blue wave was going to sweep all of that away. We were going to lose in all sorts of places like Montana and Iowa and Maine. None of that happened at all. Maine, Susan Collins was supposed to just get blown out. There was never a poll, folks, from January till Election Day that had Susan Collins ahead, and yet she won by 9 points. 9 points in Maine. That was supposed to be a pickup for the Democrats. So right now, as it stands, Republicans lead 50-48, and it all comes down to the 2 Georgia Senate races. Now, if you're wondering why there are 2 Senate races in Georgia in this one state at the same time, I'll give you a little background on that, because usually they're staggered. You have one senator running at one election cycle, and then 2 years or 4 years later, you have the other one. The reason they're both there is only one senator is actually up, and that's David Perdue. David Perdue's term, his 6-year term, was up this year. He had to run for re-election. He ran against John Ossoff, the Democrat, and he was holding on to that 50% that he needed. In Georgia, you have to have 50% plus 1 to avoid a runoff. He was holding on, and then those Atlanta votes that were hurting President Trump kept coming in, brought him below 50. So he's in a runoff with those 2. Now, the reason there's another race is because Senator Johnny Isakson, whose term was up in 2022, he retired due to health reasons. So back in December, Georgia governor, appointed Kelly Loeffler to fill that seat. So now she's senator through appointment, which means you have to schedule a special election. And that special election happened on Election Day. And that's why in that one, the field was huge. If you look at the field for David Perdue, it was basically David Perdue, Ossoff, and one other candidate. This other one, because it was a special election, was huge. You had Doug Collins, the guy, Georgia Republican rep, who really came to notoriety during the impeachment because he was so strong on the House side for President Trump. He was in the election too. So there was no way that we were going to avoid a runoff on this side, because Loeffler was strong for President Trump, Collins was strong for President Trump, and then you've got this far left radical Democrat, Raphael Warnock. He's on the Democrat side. So those 3 were the top vote getters. The top 2 were Loeffler and Warnock. And so they're headed into a runoff. And that runoff for both of them, January 5th. So mark that date. January 5th is when we're going to determine who controls the Senate. If they both lose, it's 50-50. Then it depends on who actually wins the presidential election. Because if President Trump continues, then we've got the tiebreaker with Mike Pence. If it's Joe Biden, then Kamala Harris, as president of the Senate, would cast a tie-breaking vote. I think we've got a great chance to win both of them, because no one wants to elect a radical like Warnock, and David Perdue is just better than Ossoff. He is a solid guy, supporter of President Trump. We need to elect both of them. That's what's happening January 5th. But we see what's going out there on the internet, folks. It's absolutely crazy. There's this movement. All the celebrities, all these liberal activists are heading down to Georgia to rile people up, telling people to move. Andrew Yang saying, I'm moving to Georgia to vote. Well, first of all, It's against the law to do that. Now, the law is unclear, but Georgia states that you can't move into the state solely for the purpose of voting. That's against the law. Now, how soon, how they show that is very unclear. But one thing is clear, and that is the deadline to register to vote is December 7th. That means someone moving in at the last minute has to have social security number, an ID in Georgia, and some kind of proof of residency, utility bill, home ownership, something they can show. They need all of that by December 7th. So I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. What I do think is going to be an issue is the money. Stacey Abrams is raising lots of money. There's other groups. We need to do that as well. We need to get the funds in so these folks can fight some strong campaigns. And speaking of Stacey Abrams, I just want to bring this up. She lost the governor's race in Georgia last time around by over 50,000 votes. Over 50,000 votes, and she's never conceded. She's never conceded at all, and she's looked at as a hero by the progressive left, the radical left. Yet President Trump is just exercising these legal means to challenge some very strange circumstances in the election, and they're saying, you need to concede. You need to pack it in right now. Hillary Clinton told Joe Biden, under no circumstances should you concede. Let the legal process play out, challenge it as much as you can. That's what she told Joe Biden. Now it's President Trump who's seeking those legal challenges, and they're singing a different tune. It's just outrageous. But that's the Senate, folks. We had some good gains. Held some seats that we needed to hold. And again, the blue wave, there was talk about turning Texas blue. Give me a break. That was all propaganda. President Trump won by 6 points. Senator Cornyn won by 10 points. There's no turning Texas blue. It's just so outrageous. So that brings us to the presidential race and these ongoing litigation and examinations into these states, because there are some very, very strange things going on. And to echo what Kayleigh McEnany said, in Michigan alone, they have over 100 affidavits of people that witnessed wrongdoing or were not allowed to watch the vote counting as they are required to or permitted to by law. In Pennsylvania, Republicans were prohibited from watching the vote tallying. They challenged that. The judge said, you're right, you need to be able to do that. The Democrats actually challenged it. The Democrats actually challenged the right for Republicans to watch. So when you talk about free and fair elections, that right there should sum up everything you need to know about the Democrats, that they don't even want Republicans to watch. And as it's going now, some of this process is it's just outrageous, folks. And it really does shake your confidence, because Georgia going through a full recount of the president, that's the race that they are going to fully hand recount. And yet when you look at it, observers are still far away, or you've got observers that are in charge of observing like 10 tables. I've seen the videos. You've seen the videos. That's not right. That's not how you can get an accurate count. Plus, some of this, I honestly don't know how they are going to investigate it. Changes need to be made. But as far as this one, for example, one of the things that they've kind of bypassed is the signature verification for all these absentee ballots. They could come in bogus with some illegible signature and they were still counted. But here's the problem. That verification process, the signature is on the outside of the envelope. You're not signing your ballot, because then people would know how you voted. So when that comes in, you are now taking the envelope with the signature and the ballot's going somewhere else. So even if you figure out on this envelope that this was a bogus ballot, that this signature was no good, that there was actual voter fraud, what do you do with the ballot? How do you track that down? What do you do with it? And then, of course, there's all the problems with the machines. And we've seen this Dominion voting software, the Dominion voting machines. We saw as fact 6,000 votes in one county in Michigan went for Joe Biden that were supposed to go for President Trump. They ended up switching it and fixing it, but that was used in 47 counties in Michigan. It's used in other states as well. And that same software, those machines were not even certified in Texas. This Texas review process for that machine said, no, we will not certify the Dominion machines for our state because they are too susceptible for hacking and manipulation. That's what we said in Texas. And yet it's being used for this election. and all we have is chaos, folks. And this is the thing. It's like we have these instances, but we have a limited time, and we have to be able to prove it, because there are things, as anyone knows my background, I've got a PhD in engineering. I've had probably every math class that's been invented. So I know numbers and I know statistical anomalies. The problem is that statistical anomalies by themselves are not proof, but there are some very strange things out there. For example, in Georgia, you've got a situation called undervotes, and that is where someone goes in and they vote most likely for the top of the ticket, and they don't vote for the rest of it. All right. So they might just vote for president and not leave out the rest. And that happens. That is absolutely true. I ran a congressional campaign, and we saw even in the primary, people got in. President Trump wasn't even being challenged, and yet people showed up in my county to vote for president and then go home. My candidates and the other candidates running for Congress got fewer votes than President Trump did because of this undervote. And then the extreme of that is what's known as a bullet vote, where the only vote cast was like for president, and then they just go home. Well, in Georgia, there were 95,000 of those bullet votes for Joe Biden, meaning ballots that only showed Joe Biden and no one else. 95,000. It happens to all candidates. You know how many of those happened for President Trump? About 800. 95,000 to 800. That is not right, folks. That is something that needs to be investigated, because is there a possibility that could happen? Sure. Is it likely? Absolutely, positively not. So right there, because it is so outrageous, so outside the norm, historical norm, all you need to do is look at previous elections and see how likely that was to happen in the past. That right there should cause investigations. That right there should make reporters curious. And it's like, wait, that really stands out. That is a huge red flag. Let's look into it. The problem is that the only ones looking into it with their limited resources are the Trump campaign. And they have to do this state by state by state. And that's where the problem is, folks, because a lot of these statistical anomalies are not proof in and of itself that there is voter fraud, but it certainly raises red flags that they need to look at. In Nevada, you've got people that were voting that were dead, that were out of state. Tucker Carlson did a whole monologue of all the dead people that voted in these various states. Just a sample of those. Right there is proof of voter fraud. New York Times and these other organizations want to say that there's no fraud out there at all, and yet there's documented cases. There's proof of it. We need to show it, and we need to figure out a way to look at this software, because there is another analyst out there who has testified before Congress, and he has shown that you can manipulate the Dominion software to record information after the person has voted. Is that, again, proof of voter fraud? No. But if you can do that, if it can be done on those machines, and you see all these strange anomalies, then you need to be able to look at that. You need to be able to examine it, and we need to have time to do that. So that is what's going on in the presidential race. And I want to close with just one other topic on the presidential race, and that is when you're talking about machine manipulation, voter fraud, fake dead people voting, out-of-state people voting, not being able to observe, backdating ballots, things like that. Those are things you can investigate, you can prove, you can litigate, you can do something about it. If there's a batch of ballots that were bad because of that, throw them out. There are ways, there are recourses for that. But there's the other side of it, folks. And as conservatives, that is the side that we need to address as well. And that is the voter suppression that we faced, that was existent. And what do we do about it? Because I'm talking about big tech, the media, and polling. When you are living in Wisconsin, a state that over 3.2 million people cast votes, and there's only a 20,000 vote difference, and yet going into the election, every poll had Joe Biden ahead. ABC Washington Post put out a poll that said Joe Biden was leading by 17 points. He's going to win by 17 points. And now there's only a 20,000 vote margin out of 3.2 million. That is voter suppression. If you think your guy's going to get blown out, how likely are you to vote? As I said, there wasn't one poll from January to Election Day that showed Susan Collins ahead in Maine, and yet she won by 9. Lindsey Graham, he had $100 million pumped into his opponent's race. He was supposed to be razor thin. Like, they are going to take out, as part of the blue wave, Lindsey Graham. He won by 10 points. He won by 10 points in South Carolina. And we have to be able to address this, because we will not be able to go on as a republic if the media and polling can manipulate people, suppress votes. Hunter Biden's story, Tony Bobulinski, no one's talking about him. They all jumped on Blasey Ford going after Brett Kavanaugh. This lady couldn't remember basic facts. She had no corroboration at all, yet everyone was hashtag I believe her and viciously attacking Brett Kavanaugh. Now you have Tony Bobulinski, who's very credible and has stacks of information, emails, contracts, agreements, voice memos, texts, you name it. He's got it, showing Hunter Biden involved, showing Joe Biden involved. And not only would the media not cover it, but the New York Post, which did break the story, then big tech came in and censored it. You couldn't share that story. No one talked about it, and Joe Biden wasn't asked about it. So how are we supposed to compete when the media and big tech are against us? It's just the far left have taken control of those mediums, and we have to fight back against that, because if voters aren't even coming out, then you can forget about ballot manipulation and voter fraud. If we don't have the numbers just because they stay home, because our news is being manipulated, because big tech is altering searches, because if they ban stories from sharing, people have a right to know those stories, and we need to be able to fight back against that. Otherwise, we're finished as a party and we're finished as a movement. We need to strike back. So, folks, that's our show for today. I want to give a special shout out to some folks. Thank our moderators. They always do a good job. And again, I'm going to join you on the post-show chat. So, because I don't get to chat while I'm actually live here. Then I got to give a shout out to our producers. They are working diligently, folks, to pick up and build their social media following. So please say hi to them, give thanks to them, and all of you folks that contributed to Super Chat. I really, really appreciate it. We've got some great stuff coming for the show, and we're going to have some new stuff in the store. New merchandise, some good relaxed brain merchandise. I know people have been asking about that. It's coming. It's coming soon, so be ready for that. So next show is going to be 11:45 Central Time, Standard Time, for the 13-minute news hour on Monday. We've got some great guests coming. I'm working on Matt Schlapp, Steve Cortez from the Trump campaign, talking about what's going on out there. I've talked to both of those guys. We're just trying to work out the details, so we might have some special shows, maybe a Saturday live stream again next week. Lots going on. But until then, and before you go, please subscribe. And when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified. And we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a Saturday live stream. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified. And here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-minute news hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary.